All right, so welcome everyone. We haven't run one of these for quite a while online, but we've been very active just locally in Sydney. So yeah, would you like to do a bit of a wave reaction just to say hi to everyone? Maybe hit that
Hi,
wave
everyone.
to something. Great to see you all. Just yeah, I do notice like quite a few familiar faces. I think looking through the RSVP list, were quite a few people who have not been to one of these before. So yeah, we often do these with people from outside of Australia, and we're really lucky to have Alexey join us from Germany this evening. Uh, so before we get into the session, I just want to let you know photo there. See if we can take a screen cap later or something. But we will be doing Q&A at the end of this, and thanks to everyone who's already submitted a question through Meetup. What I've done is pop them into Slido. This is not something we've used a lot on this meetup, so fingers crossed about the technology here. But I might just see if I can share with you a couple of things. So one is, obviously this is the meetup listing here, but we just look at this one here. We've got a slido.com. If you go to that, there's a link in the Zoom chat, and you can either plug in that number there or perhaps take the QR code right now. But we won't be reacting to the questions during this session, like until we conclude, I guess, until Alexey finishes up his piece, maybe about 40 minutes in. We'll pause and start looking at those questions. And of course, with Slido, you can vote on questions that are already there. So as well as submitting one yourself, you could vote on some others. So at the end of like Alexey's piece, we'll see which questions bubble to the top. All right. Were there any questions about that? Maybe can I get a thumbs up that that's working for anyone? Can you access it? You can see how to submit a question. Awesome. Great. Well, I've known Alexey for quite a few years, I guess, through the Scrum community, the Less community. And yeah, just found he's got lots of great perspectives. And like he was telling me a short while ago, he never does the same talk twice. So even though he's
Hmm.
talking to people in the side of the world, he's literally come up with something unique for us in this session this evening. I really have to thank him again because he's meant to be on holidays at the moment, summer holidays, and he's taken time out, even though it's super hot indoors, to actually do this with us. So
It's okay to have a rest from the kids from once in a while. So this is 2 hours of me not being with the kids. So I'm quite happy for that.
but yeah, I think we should thank him again just before we start. Yeah, thank you, Alexey. If you want to do a vote.
Thanks, guys. Thanks,
Yeah.
and thanks for having me, and thanks for having your interest to this topic. And I will click share, and you should see the slide now. And so the talk is called Creating 10x Orgs, Breaking Free from Value Streams. And there have been quite a few questions from you all about what those value streams are and what I mean by that. Do I mean the lean ones or the safe ones, etc., etc.? So I will try to explain my thinking behind that. And I'm here representing Org Topologies, which is something we've been working on with few of my colleagues. Prepared some slides with pictures and memes. So hopefully 40 minutes is enough to get through. Again, thanks for this group for hosting this wonderful meetup. You guys have 4 and 5 star rating, which is, I guess, fantastic. So you should do it more often. Great. So if you enter the homepage of the Org Topologies, and some of you have been there and read on what we've been working on for these 4 or 5 years, it's the first people plus AI management and org design system. And I will explain you some of the things that now we can explain with Org Topologies. So we have never planned to create Org Topologies as a thing to sell or to write a book about. We just were lacking a language to explain what's happening in organizations, and eventually that grew into a system, and eventually now we are actually writing a book on that. Roland and myself, we started this about 4 years ago, actually before the war in Ukraine. I remember that. And then Craig Alarman, the co-creator of Large Scale Scrum Less, joined us last year. And now three of us, we write a book on this topic. So some of the things I'll present here are like some kind of fragments of the chapters or the thinking in the book. Hopefully the book is out by the end of this year, but there's no commitment on that. It's still in writing. A few words about myself. I helped create first-class, multi-team, large-scale Scrum product development organizations. And I've, over my 25 years of career in consulting, I saw many attempted org changes. Some of them were more successful than the others. Worked with quite a few orgs around the world. And that's what I bring to the Org Topologies, all these observations from what orgs are and how orgs change and how orgs succeed or fail in change. So hopefully this language of Org Topologies you'll be able to use to explain your org changes. I know here we have many seasoned consultants. You might not learn a lot of new material, but at a meta level, you'll be able to see hopefully how Org Topologies is a language to actually explain and use as an explanatory language to see what's happening in the orgs. I know I'm doing this meetup for you guys down under, so I've created of course special map for you, so you can better see. And of course on the website you can download a better one. All right. If you haven't seen that map yet, I will explain briefly what those axes are. And we're doing this meetup with Rowan because we'll see each other in Singapore beginning of September at a LESS conference. And I'll also be doing a live 2-day class. So that's somewhere closer to you than where I'm currently at in Germany. So if you are willing to learn more, willing to travel to Singapore and also join the LESS conference there on the next day, here's an invitation for you, QR code. You could learn more. I will repeat the slide later on for you guys to learn more. Okay, so where do I start with my breaking free from the value streams? I guess we should start at a pre-AI era, and here's a pre-AI quote for you. Concentrating each worker on a single subtask often leads to greater skill and greater productivity than if each worker tried to make a whole product on their own. So this is a famous quote, and maybe some of you can guess which year it is. It's pre-AI, so it's, I guess, either pre-2024 or pre-1960. Would you mind putting your guesses in the chat? As maybe who might be the author of this quote and from when it is. Frederick Taylor times, 1970 Taylor, Ford, it's like 30, 40. Yeah, that's what I would expect. And 1910 says Rowan a bit earlier. Yeah, we can all think this way, but actually, if you check it, it's from 1776. Whoa, that's from Adam Smith. That's probably the first ever quote on how to organize work. And Adam Smith actually back in those days had done a very thorough, like actually first research on how work is being done, and he was trying to consult some companies. This is an example of a company he's consulted, a pin factory of 18th century. So people were doing some pins from metal and stuff. So, and he also made some very bold promises. He actually reported in his papers, you can fact check me with AI, almost 500-fold increase in productivity per worker. So no surprise, like this is a very, very famous idea to create single workers, give them subtasks, and because it will likely lead to greater performance. And we believe that's from Taylor, that's from Ford, but no, they didn't invent it. They took it from actually Adam Smith and some of his followers. So very old ideas. Anybody working in a pin factory? Raise your hands. I see no hands. I guess we're not working in pin factories anymore. We have moved on. The world has moved on. The thinking has not moved on for a lot of people, interestingly. So that's the Org Topologies map, upside down for you guys. I'm sorry. So, so it has these two axes of scope of skills mandate horizontally and scope of work mandate horizontally. Essentially, these are 16 boxes that we believe are enough to kind of put any work unit you have in your organization, creative work unit, value delivering work unit, supporting work unit, depending on, are they working on outputs, lower part, or outcomes, upper part? Are they incomplete left part, or whether they are complete right part? And the space between the boxes is actually also very important because every skip from a box to a box, every jump requires a change of paradigm, right? Because if you go from box tasks 1 to tasks 2, lower boxes on the left side, you're actually going from functional people working on tasks to multi-skill work units. So you're creating some kind of teams, which is a big paradigm change. So if we talk about single task workers as based on this quote, probably we can map them at a lower part of the map. And yeah, they work on task. They don't really understand the problem out there. This bubble, top right corner is like the customer problem we're trying to solve. They're too far away from it. They're just given tasks. And it's not because they are stupid people, it's because we want them to understand all the tasks and not the whole problem. And because we have a bunch of helpers, admin staff, secretaries, managers, to actually break down that problem into kind of tasks and try to match those tasks to skills. That's essentially what Adam Smith and his followers were trying to suggest. And I guess that's nothing new here. But on a meta level, the power of topologies mapping is that you can actually visualize that. And I guess how many, 400 years later, 300 years later, and plus, I guess we still have single task workers in our organization. Right? So that concept is still there. If we generalize this concept a bit more, you can have narrow specialists that maybe form some kind of teams, but the teams are also like very, very specialized. And on top of them, you have management and other supporting functions. And this is a pretty classical setup that we see in nowadays organization. It is so classical that we have given it a name. It's a resource topology. And in the material on the website and in the books, we define 3 topologies, and a resource topology is one of them. And every topology has its own goal. It's something it is optimizing for, something good you want to achieve with that. And with resource topology, you're trying to, aim for performance through deep specialization. So nothing bad with that. Sometimes that's the right idea to do. And the org design that follows, typically you create very narrow job descriptions, right? You put people on lower part of 2 axes, the mandates of what their skills they can apply, and the mandates on the work that they're doing is pretty low. And essentially you will have some kind of a task list, backlogs per employee or per group of functional employees, and then you need to have a bunch of managers and other supporting functions to connect those workers which are incomplete to what they need to do. And it's a pretty classical setup, even it's been known for these many centuries now. And we all know, like being in the field of agile, that it can have some kind of other side of it, right? And the example that we found is from the healthcare, the Obamacare implementation. Most of the people actually do know the fact that the healthcare.gov website was a big disaster in 2013. And I will read you the slide, some quotes. According to the sources, healthcare.gov was digitally composed of 24 interconnected software applications with more than 38 APIs. And it's not a problem. The problem is that each of these applications and API and components had been built by different 55 firms. So you have a lot of people in the left part of the map, but they also belong to different organizations. So you have a very mosaic, so to say, org design with, of course, a lot of miscommunication, disintegration, and problems that actually also super expensive. And it's known for the fact that the first days and weeks after the website was launched, so to say, less than 1% of people actually were able to sign up and do something meaningful with that. So each org design has its pros and cons and can be used. I guess if you are in a bit factory, that's a perfect org design because every beam needs to come out equally the same. If you are doing some kind of a more creative work or software where each feature is unique, not like pins, then I guess that org design doesn't really work. But you all know that. What's interesting is that what we have been seeing for the last 30 years plus is this transition from resource topology to delivery topology. And that's also known as agile transformation, but in Org Topologies language, we call it the first agile wave, because it's not the only agile move, or it's not the only move you can make on the map to improve something. And typically in this move, you all know this, we take those narrow specialists and put them into teams, make them complete end to end, allowing them to work, even expanding. And now the magic happens, and the magic of Scrum is that those teams actually can now understand user and can work on capabilities, and the backlogs those teams have are not just do not have to be filled with tasks, but can be filled with some features to be built, known as user stories, right? So this is an improvement. And the goal of this topology is to increase performance through fast delivery within teams. So of course, by putting people together who are dependent, we are reducing or even eliminating dependencies, and that's why agile teams are faster. And the org design that follows is actually the following one. You take your whole product that customers understand, that the business invests in, and you break it down into parts. And then you form backlog per each team and per each part that assigned to a team. And that's what I call by the value stream in the stock, which is not the classical lean value stream, but if you look at so-called agile frameworks and stuff, that what they mean by value streams, essentially assigning teams, attaching teams to some kind of a piece of value long term that the users understand. And many orgs that I work with these days actually can be seen as a delivery topology. So topology is a kind of a generalization. You can have people in different boxes, but if you zoom out, you will see a lot of teams being in a CAPS 3, CAPS 4 area of the map, and each team has its own backlog, its own focus, and many people have good arguments for why it is good. And one argument is that you divide and conquer. People don't need to learn everything. The cognitive load will be limited. The funny fact, like if you actually study history, divide and conquer never meant about us. It actually meant by Romans about the others. You go there and you define and you divide the others, and then you can conquer them. So it means weakening opponents by creating divisions among them. But that's how many orgs are currently structured, right? You have a backlog per team, you have a product owner per team. Each team works on what, of course, it's not value streams, but people call them value streams. That's why I'm using this term in quotes in this talk. And it's org design by itself is never good or bad. It can be fit or unfit for purpose. And I guess we all know when this org design is fit for purpose, right? And maybe a few people might want to share their thinking now with the microphones or in the chat. Where does this org design fit? In which environment? I mean, this will be the right thing to do in terms of organizing your work. Anybody wants to volunteer?
I could have
Anything?
stab at saying when you've got very consistent amounts of demand across each of those components or areas that those or value streams that those teams work in.
Yeah, that's on spot, right? Like if you can guarantee that every backlog will have enough valuable work forever or until these teams are attached to them, there's no need for team A to actually know anything about teams B, C, etc. Backlogs and work. So as long as the demands are stable, which I guess it's not about software development, if you think of that, but it's about some other work, and maybe service organizations, right, can be formed this way without any problems. Like I can imagine, some clerks in an insurance company processing different kinds of insurance claims, and you can see statistically, how many people you need per each type of claim, and those flows of claims are unlikely to change. But the question is, like in software and product development, probably there will be no equal demand forever. And then the teams should be able to help each other, right? Like if team A is working on something super important this time around, this quarter, then maybe B and C and Z should actually go and help them. But what I typically teach in the classes is actually what happens, what will prevent the teams from helping each other on high priority items from a global point of view. And essentially, like if you've been through this org with so-called value stream org design, you will typically see that actually many things will prevent them from helping each other. For instance, just give you some of the examples. We don't have that much time. It's a topic for a couple of hours. But like you probably know that, first of all, how would they know that what's in the backlog A is more important than what's in backlog B, C, etc.? You typically need to do an exercise of printing all these backlogs and knocking on your CEO's office, putting all these papers down the floor, like on the carpet, and say, hey, would you please prioritize that? And provided that he can understand what's in those backlogs, which is actually unlikely, he will be able to prioritize. And then maybe from that, you will see, okay, this time around, this third quarter of a year, what a team A is working on is kind of more important than what the other teams are working on. Like to give you a real example, I work in a German social network company for a couple of years, and we had different initiatives. And one example would be at some point we were trying to compete with WhatsApp and other messaging apps because Germans are very careful about security, and so there was an idea to build a secure, professional messaging. So there was a so-called Team A, right, whose backlog was filled with those messaging features. But other teams had no idea, actually, that was important because they had their own backlogs and their own team product owners and their own roadmaps. So first, it's actually hard to know which one is the most important because you kind of isolated teams from each other. Second argument, what prevents teams from helping? imagine there is some mechanism to learn that what's in backlog A is more important than B and C. Will the team level product owner of team B will allow its team to just go and do what the team's A product owner wants? In theory, this is possible, right? They'll work in the same company. They all should understand the global priorities, and they should put their egos aside and do what's good for the company. But I've never seen that in any real org, because the team level product owner of a team B would not want to lose her team, because a product owner with a team is not a product owner, because essentially these people are not owning products, they're owning teams. So they are team owners, and a team owner without a team is not an owner. So there will be some identity crisis. And the third argument, and actually the arguments are we can create more, but to stop there, the third argument, even if that, which is unlikely, the other product owners will say, okay, teams, I will just wait here for you for a month. I guess reading some newspaper, just go and help the team A. The team B will say, hey, but we have no idea how to help because it's a different repository. It's a different programming language. They use different code conventions. They build stuff differently. So if you want us to help, it will take us like months to learn how to deal with that codes. And because, every team will typically has a team lead, the team lead will say, yeah, it's not efficient. It's not efficient for a team to go and waste their time learning. So because of these and many other reasons, the local optimizations in lists is a very common so-called disease in organizations, where, as Roman said, demand cannot be predicted and it's not even. So I guess a rhetorical question. So even though the backlog A has the most important items for this time of the company's life, everybody will be busy working off their backlogs. So if the team's B backlog is not important, they will be still working on that, right? And when that backlog will dry out, what will they do? Rhetorical question, they will make up work for themselves, right? So every team will be busy, and every team will be working on something that they believe locally is more important. And because of what I've listed above, likely they will not even know the other teams are working on something on higher of higher value. And eventually, this yields the law of diminishing returns, right? So like, you imagine a team is working on some feature set A, they started, it's ahead of this feature set, the value is still low, but then they're progressing, and at some point they're shipping the most important parts that the customer actually can now use and get some value. But eventually, after some time, the value will diminish because doing more of the same does not yield the same value. So at some point, the value will be kind of negative. So if you attach teams to so-called value streams or product areas or whatever you call them, like in software product development, it's very likely this law of diminishing returns will be working against you all the time. And if you would be an investor for this company, probably you will say, no, this is not the company I would want to invest, because the returns are actually going down over time because teams are able to help each other based on the previous logic and to actually work on what matters. What makes it even more interesting is that imagine there's still this company, and another question is what would a typical management response be when a new product capability needs to be introduced? Like, imagine all teams are busy and working off the backlogs, and now somebody comes, like maybe CPO comes and say, hey guys, I got this wonderful idea. We were building these, say, online games for adults. How about we reuse our technology and now start building apps for preschool kids to learn alphabets and arithmetics? There's a whole new niche there. And a typical response would be, hey, no, the teams are busy with working off their local roadmaps. let's introduce another team to work on that. And Rowan, I see nodding, and most of you will not, because if you have seen that org design, that what typically happens. With every new experiment, with every new idea, you need to spawn a new team because all other teams are busy. And this is actually how this orgs over time gets bigger and bigger. And it's not just the law of diminishing returns that hits them. It's also the cost will be growing over time because you'll have more teams, more employees, more developers working in this company. So from investors' point of view, this is actually disastrous idea. Less returns over time and more cost over time. Like, don't invest in this org. Invest in the others where they can actually work on high priority stuff with few people all the time. Okay, what makes it even more interesting is this dynamics, which we call 1x dynamics. And I will try to draw here a little bit. So what typically happens is this, this red line shows that performance is kind of low, and somebody in the org will say, hey, well, this performance is low because the teams are not aligned to the value. Let's look at our product. Let's look at our value. Let's recut it into proper pieces and then give these new pieces to new teams. And once you, maybe in January, looked at your roadmap, cut it into pieces, into so-called value streams, and reform teams, and gave every team its own value stream, your performance probably will go up because now each team is working again on what's valuable because that cut was taken from the existing roadmap. And now the teams are learning to work, and once they've learned to work on this new stuff, they will be progressing and they will be focusing. But because the world is not fixed, the stuff will change, the roadmap become out of date, some new ideas will be introduced. Over time, this org will kind of see that the performance of the org will go down because of what we discussed previously, the team's not able to actually help each other and work on high priority values. So over time, maybe in 6 months, you will end up in a situation where, again, somebody will say, hey, our org is not fit for purpose. Our roadmap has changed since we've cut our teams. Let's do a reorg again. You do the reorg again, and then you work again, maybe likely for 9 months, and then you do reorg again. So if you've been with these orgs, maybe not every 6 months, but every couple of years, they have to do a reorg. And that reorg yields only temporary performance improvement. So in average, there's like no improvement, or what we call, as a joke, 1x improvement. Over time, they're improving nothing. They stay the same because they didn't exit from the paradigm. The paradigm is to look at the roadmap, cut it, and give each team a piece. And as long as you're staying there, I guess very unlikely you'll get some significant improvement. In the class, we study that with root cause diagrams and how this all happens. We don't have time to go there, but there's actually something to learn about how this plays out in the organizations. And this all is because the following: resource topology and delivery topology, they are actually based both on the same premise, on the same principle of the principle of Adam Smith of considering each worker on single subtask. So essentially, these two topologies, they look very different. And for many of us agile coaches, and I've been in this trap too, I was helping orgs to move from resource topology to delivery topology, thinking that's it. But in fact, I was still helping kind of implement the pin factory org design of the 18th century. And you might find these new org designs having new terms and new fancy pictures. New books are coming out every once in a while. And I guess team topology is one of these ideas. I'll let you guys read that, a comic on team topologies, if you haven't seen that. Yeah, so if you have seen team topologies in action, not by the book, but how the orgs implement it, you will see this dynamics. Actually, it's somewhere in between these two topologies. Will have some teams which are more like agile teams, stream aligned, and the other teams will support them being attached to a component or a platform. And because human psychology is not going away with org design, you'll have all those interesting dynamics playing out in the org. And, every team will protect its territory, and every team will just do what's in the backlog, and nobody is taking care of the whole picture or even allowed to work on the whole picture. And meta message with Org Topology, so you can map any kind of a team. And we've mapped with the team topologies, four team types: enabling teams, streamlined teams, complex subsystems team, platform teams. And essentially, yeah, you can see it's a kind of in between two topologies. And maybe some exceptional implementations can be somewhere top right, but in average, these are typical 1x orgs that are trying to be fast, but actually because of that becoming super inadaptive, not able to sustain themselves. That's why I guess if you are in the team topologies implementation, every couple of years, you'll have to reshuffle teams, recut the teams, reassign the teams to different work, which is against actually the whole idea of team topologies to minimize cognitive load, because they become irrelevant over time. As your product changes, but your teams are attached to the parts of the product, over time, people in the teams grow irrelevant. So no surprise, we see a lot of people saying Agile is dead. Well, many orgs, I think, have not seen Agile living. That's why they think it's dead, because they actually never implemented the Agile structures that will enable people to actually show their adaptive learning human behaviors. So what are the solutions? How do we break free from the pin factory thinking? Most of you know that healthcare example I brought before, that there was a disaster in 2013 with 55 contracting vendors trying to create product from scratch, and it didn't work. Not many people know they actually was a second attempt, and I learned it from Craig Larman. Please read. There's some facts here on the slide. So what happens if thousands of people cannot deliver? You hire 10, right? And they actually able to pull out some magic out of the sleeves. How? You just allow on them. It's not just the 10 best people, but actually, if you go in from 1,000 to 10, your budget is still 1,000. So you can really hire 10 best. That's one thing. Second thing, you can create the completely different org design, right? You don't have a luxury to fix them to components, because you have only 5 people and hundreds of components. So you need to allow them to work across the whole product. And they're not working on value streams, in value streams, with value streams anymore. They're working with the whole thing. And that's a big difference. And that was 2013. A more recent example is the Cursor, the AI code editor most people love, and I use it too for my AI augmented coding, and it's like built for several years just by 4 guys. And in interview, they say, at the same time, we're working on UX, improving the model and training the model, sort of doing all at once. So essentially, that's the ultimate answer to how to break free from value streams. We need to use what humans are good at switching context. Sounds bad, but switching context, is necessary if you need to break from the law of diminishing return. So what a good team, what an adaptive team, what a true agile team will do after their feature set they've been working on is starting to yield negative returns. They need to switch and work on something else that has a higher global priority and that actually goes completely against staying in your value stream. So if you allow teams to stay in a value stream just for the time being to focus, people need to focus. But then once they're done, if you allow them to switch to new value, that will actually create a more adaptive topology. It can be a one team that drives the outcomes, like in the example of Cursor and healthcare, second attempt, or it can be at scale with a team of teams doing that. And this is the third topology we have discovered by doing that's my timer, but I still need to go for a few minutes. That's the third topology we have discovered. The optimizing goal of this topology is to manage performance through learning and boundaryless collaboration. And it sounds like something super fancy, super new, but not really. Like if we go back, and I know we have a few Scrum trainers here, like if we go back to the roots of Scrum, 1986, right? The new product development game. They actually mentioned that, like people doing sort of many things at the same time, and they were coining this term multi-learning. So they said, actually, if you really want to build innovative products, you really need to allow people to learn and transfer learning. And not many people know. My friend Karol Smutny, Scrum trainer from Czechia, he actually did a research, and he found out actually these real products were built with that. Like these products were studied by those two Japanese professors who were writing article about Scrum in '86, and these were very, very innovative products back in those days. And they were not built by teams working inside value streams. They were working with where people were allowed to learn and put their skills to work where the work mattered. And if they did not have skills, they had to acquire those skills to still do the valuable work. A few last slides. The new challenges that we currently have, 2024, 2025, is of course AI. And there are many quotes. This guy you should follow, right? The CEO of Anthropic, Dario Amodei, and he's saying that half of entry-level jobs will be wiped out eventually. And I think this threat is real. You don't have to believe it, but I think we're going where some workers will be replaced with AIs. So the timeline is like that. Adam Smith, Pin Factory, Scrum, and now AI. And what's the message I'm trying to send here is this one, right? If you're finding yourself as a worker, as a manager, working in or supporting either of these topologies, and the company is promising you safe jobs and safe career letters and all that, they probably lying to your face, because linear career paths are the things of the past. And nobody can promise you that if you're good at doing Java backends, you'll be doing Java backends next year, because the times are badly changing. And you probably have seen that one when you were a kid. I definitely did. You remember that one? And remember, Sally, when I promised to kill you last, he says with an Austrian accent, I lied. He says, Arnold. So even if the companies tell you, yeah, you still will be good, you still can grow in 5 years to become a senior Java developer for backends, probably they are lying to you. Maybe not even knowing that. For sure, HR people don't know that they're lying, but most likely there will be no human job for backend Java developer in 5 years. So good news, bad news. Bad news is some of these jobs will be replaced by AI. And I guess a rhetorical question, who is easier to replace? A visual designer who is, designing some logos, probably already replaced. Somebody who stays within one repository, within one language, probably will be replaced, right? So the more you are to the lower left part of the map, outcome-based, incomplete, one skill, the easier you are to replace with AI because that's what AIs are actually trained on. And the good news is that there's another world of elevated multi-learners, as we call them in Org Topologies, and Org Topologies have nothing to do with that. We did not invent that. We just discovered that there are these three different worlds, and just putting this in the perspective of where we are at the crossroads of AI revolution, I guess it will be way harder to replace with AI somebody who can, work across repositories, across components, across programming languages. Today, talking to customer, tomorrow doing some prototyping, the day after coding and deploying some real app, to actually go to the customer back on Friday to learn about the feedback. These people will be way harder to replace than the others. I guess you would agree with me here. So the good news is that we can use AI to actually go there and become multi-learners. If I go back quickly, like to that slide of 1986, that sounds very good, but it was probably unrealistic in 1986 to allow people to learn so radically. But I think now we have a great helper with AI. And a big message here is that people use AI a lot as a doer, but AI is also a great teacher. It can actually get you going to the top right corner of the map. And in the class, I do an exercise. I give people a very weird requirement, like in German. They cannot even read what that is. And then I invite them to use AI, and they go from that requirement they cannot even pronounce to list of prioritized user stories with examples in under 20 minutes. I guess that is incredible. Some real-time examples I have heard from my clients and my colleagues. From customer interviews to product requirement documents with AI, from PRDs to list of hypotheses, from hypothesis to wireframing and user stories, from user stories to acceptance tests, from tests to code. This is all possible. And this is applying AI not to support one function. It is applying AI to help somebody, acquire new skills. So like a developer with AI can do all these things now, which is the true definition of becoming a multi-learner. So before 2025, these tasks were somebody's jobs. Can you imagine that? Like in 2024, somebody's job was to read customer interviews and convert them to PRD documents. It is almost automated out now with AI. And if we know how to use that, we can actually become multi-learners and start building new topologies where people are not locked within value streams, where people freedom is not limited or constrained. And as we write in a book, we are formulating principles of 10x orgs. Please read some of them. So I guess we are witnessing very interesting times where things that were almost impossible or were able to do only by rare companies now can be done by almost everybody for actually $20 a month for AI license. You can learn to become a multi-learner, and you can learn to break free slowly from dysfunctional value streams in dynamic environment to actually people learning and people adding value where it needs to be added. And one of my last slide is that the choice of staying relevant is ours. And thanks to the topologies language that we have discovered, we now, I believe, can articulate that better and maybe trigger a few more people to start looking at this world of possibilities. And if you would like to learn more, of course, feel free to join our classes. We also have an online class on the website happening in October if you're not willing to travel. In this class, for full 2 days, we'll be going deeper, way deeper into these subjects and mapping different organizations. And by the end of 2 days, you will leave this class with a very clear idea how you would improve your own organization, making it more adaptive and more human-centric with AI, if that better supports your product goal. Thank you, Alexey Krvitsky, Org Topologies. I think I have run out of time already 7 minutes ago. That's why I was a bit rushing through the things. But now I can breathe in, breathe out, get some water, and maybe we can engage into a discussion with you guys. Thank you for staying with me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alexey. Can you all join me in thanking Alexey? That was
Thanks.
quite a lot more provocative and yeah, actually really hit home a lot more for me than I expected, to be honest. Yeah. And by the way, yeah, I actually went to Amsterdam for that Org Topologies course Alexey's mentioned, and yeah, it's fantastic, really, with the amount of deep thinking you do, causal loop diagramming, exploring your own organization, I think is one of the most powerful things, right? You actually workshop your actual current organization and work on where could that go from where we are. So I've just posted again the Slido link, and it'd be great to have everyone have a look at that. Or maybe it's okay, share my screen. I think that's the top of the list there. I've added 1 or 2 votes to try to get 1 or 2 things up the top. But yeah, if you'd like to weigh in on some votes there, we might start looking at what bubbles to the top.
And I've just shared the slides in the chat, so feel free to download the PDF.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Thank you, Alexey.
So the first question is, I guess, how does this 10x approach manage the practicality of team member line management? Yeah, so line management, like everything, also needs to change, right? If you're changing your org design. So one example is that if you actually switching to the teams, which I call versatile, right? Which can jump topics and work on different things and also work in a cross-functional end-to-end manner. Your line managers, your line management also needs to follow along. So you cannot have a manager who is fixed to a function. You need to have a manager who can also, be good at learning and jumping topics and improvising and helping their teams to get better at that. So it's actually very different to a classical manager who is just there at the base case to help you get better at your discipline. In this case, managers who can support you and give you good strategies, I guess, and support to learn more effectively. So these managers I need to be also cross-functional and versatile. The good news is that we don't need so many managers in these orgs as in resource or delivery topology, because these more versatile, more adaptive teams that are allowed to learn, because they can work end to end on what's really important. You don't need actually to go and micromanage them, to go and to coordinate dependencies, because most of the dependencies have been eliminated. So you need just few managers to support these teams And that's why I guess you can find those great engineers, great learners who have already, been programming in several languages across different platforms, know the entire product, and are also good at not just engineering, but also, speaking the business language and talking to customers. So that's the good profile of a manager who we have, who we need. And to sound even more provocative, you can actually go without managers at all. You can go manager-less eventually. And there's an example of a real company in Czech Republic, in Czechia, called Ysoft. Soft. I will spell it in the chat. You can Google this up. They have articles actually claiming that before they get rid of the managers, the teams, although were allowed to learn, they were not learning. They were still locked within their boxes and value streams and knowledge pockets, because the managers eventually kept them there. And they have realized that about 5-6 years ago and promoted all the managers to become team members. And some left and some joined the teams. And now going 5+ years without managers, only they have a CEO and 2 product owners for the entire company of 17 teams in R&D. They say the teams are showing incredible abilities of learning. They acquired a company, and in a month, the teams in-house were able to work across the code base of that merged company, which is actually, I think, is a surprising capability. So management needs to change too, and that's probably good and bad news here, because these are people who will typically fight the change unless they know why the change is good. That's why in the book we have a whole chapter on how to bring managers along in change, and how not to impose change on people, but let them own change and want this change. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Rowan, for that link to the Ysoft case study. They also spoken at multiple conferences. You can also find YouTube talks about them. I'm not sure if I'm answering the right question. So if that's somebody's question, you can go specifically on that if you want.
Yeah, along those lines, I was thinking of inviting anyone who's on the call to call out your question, because I'm recognizing quite a lot of these ones were from folk that may not be here right now. Did anyone here have something on your mind? Chat with Alexey about.
What I also see in terms of the management changes in orgs, which are trying to go along this path of becoming more adaptive and focusing on learning, is that they actually get rid of a position of a discipline manager, because manager will not be able to, pick up the amount of learnings the team's doing. So why to have the manager in the first place? So what they do, they on one hand introduce people managers, and people managers who just care about people stuff, and the discipline management and knowledge acquisition and stuff is being run through shared mentorship. So if there's a person who is good at X, and X being language or technology, a module, a customer problem, and the team now needs to dive into that person is a naturally great mentor for the team for the time being, right? And this is not a manager, because once the team is through with this topic, they will need another mentor. So this idea of networking mentorship communities is, I guess, more fit for purpose if your goal is to create this adaptive, versatile teams. The second question, which has been upvoted, is about AI. Is about how do you ensure AI-driven learning actually results in behavioral change, not just more dashboards. Yeah, I guess that's where we still need to learn a lot and help orgs a lot. I'm not sure if I'm bringing the right example here, but I've talked to several companies who have been like early AI adopters, and what they say is, hey, they say we gave everybody, ChatGPT license, $20 a month, not big cost, right? But they say we also don't see increase of performance. It's still the same stuff, but now with AI. And our thinking along the line here is that, yeah, I mean, if you apply an AI within your existing org design, and your org design is based on siloed teams, siloed individuals, they'll just be doing their current work faster. Like a bad example, right? If you give AI to somebody who is producing requirement documents, those people will be just faster at writing those documents, maybe with less spelling mistakes and stuff. But eventually, it will not speed up the whole process of converting those requirements into what users want. So if you really would like to get benefit of AI, you need to break through silos with AI. And that's exactly what AI can be a great tool for, because like in my example in the slide deck, you can really take AI and go from, I have no idea what that is, as a new law in Europe about confidentiality, for example, to unit tests in like under half an hour. And then you can code them if you want, or you can still use AI to actually go beyond that. And before, these were jobs of 5 different people. So instead of, I guess I'm repeating myself and stating the obvious, but that's the nature of this question, right? And it's the nature of the time we're in. We need to educate everybody that you need to think, across the boxes. You need to use AI to help people do more, not faster, but more. And eventually, I think eventually companies will see that, and we will start seeing less and less jobs like business analyst or UX designer or visual designer, because eventually engineers and product managers with AIs will be able to, fill in those gaps in the skills with AI and get better at that. And good news, bad news, right? The bad news is for these guys who have been business analysts in the career for many years. But I guess we still have time to help them see that risk is coming. Somebody's, holding them above the cliff and saying, you'll be the next one. Maybe they don't see it yet, but we see it's coming. And I guess they might still have a year or half a year, a few months, to become a multi-learner. And maybe it's not to learn how to code. Maybe that's harder, but maybe to learn how to talk to customers, hypothesize on the customer problems, growing few more hands and skills is now cheaper and possible. So before you are dropped off the cliff, I think you need to learn how to do it. Or if you're not allowed to learn in your current company, change the company where you will be allowed to learn. Because that's actually the message of Org Topologies. People in boxes, they're not there because they're stupid or like don't have some levels of IQ. It's because companies keep them there. And if the company, based on its current org design, wants you to stay a functional business analyst, maybe you should not want that as a functional business analyst and go off and either join a team and learn some other skills, or as I said, maybe join a company where this will be possible, or do some side project, pet projects where you will be learning some other stuff. I guess I also know we're in August 2025 and changing jobs is not as easy as 3 years ago. Yes, it's a fact. And this fact that the companies will use against their employees, because capitalism is capitalism, right? But now that we know, we can do something with that. as individuals. And at Org Topologies, we believe that individuals, we humans, like evolutionary, we are adaptive and we are great learners. And just orgs don't allow us to show our human nature, and we need to look for better places. That's the idea. Do I have time for another question, Rowan? Or are we?
I just wanted to check if anyone, does have one or saw something in that list that they're curious about. This is the last chance.
I guess the third question about what I mean by value stream thinking, I kind of answered.
Yeah.
In between the lines. Executive leadership will often prioritize predictability over the potential for improved results. Yes, this is true, and predictability is not a bad thing. Like for investor, like if you were thinking as an investor, right? You want predictability. You want to see the results that were promised coming out. So it's not bad. But actually, if you think of that, resource topology, the clear, pure Taylorism, and the delivery topology, the value stream in quotes, they actually not driving predictability if your environment is changing. Only drive predictability when the environment is fixed, when it can be predicted, and when the teams and people will be always relevant by staying where they are. But if you are in a more dynamic environment, and I guess product development is the example of a more dynamic environment, keeping people attached to skills or functions or work or module or value streams, eventually it will not lead to predictable delivery. Because as in my example, maybe something else becomes most important, like the messaging features. And if it's only now one team out of 20 can do it, it will be slow and expensive. And if the team will have troubles, which will slow down delivery, you actually will not see predictable delivery. So actually predictability in dynamic environment comes from people able to jump and help each other, stop doing what they're doing when it has no value, and learn things that add value. That what predictability in dynamic environment is. And the question is, executive often want predictability, but maybe, yes, but sometimes what they got in most cases is the illusion of predictability. And I guess our job is to help them see what real predictability is in the changing times. And the good news here, and I think Org Topologies method helps here, is that you don't need to change your entire organization to start experimenting. Maybe you have 50 teams which are assigned to fixed value streams, and because it's been how you've been working on, fine. But if you see that maybe, what I've mentioned in the slides, we have this dynamics of people not being able to work on what's valuable, not being able to help each other. Yes, maybe you see that. But it doesn't mean you need to go and change all the 60 teams. Maybe you can just learn and try with 5 teams for the next half a year. And people like Rowan and others who have been with the last community, they can help you to make that experiment successful, right? If you're given 5 teams, Rowan, of motivated volunteers from a large org, I'm sure you can build a very adaptive ecosystem, which will be very much large scale like, and you will show with an A/B test that these 5 teams are more predictable, better learning, blah, 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 versus those other remaining 55 teams. And then it'll be up to the managers to decide, do we want more of that, or do we want to keep both? And maybe even keeping both worlds long term is fine, because maybe some parts of the business are more stable. Maybe you have government contracts, right? Another part of the business, maybe it's a more volatile, and that's where you would want versatile teams that are learning. You can actually have both of these worlds in the same company.
Yeah, nice one. I think it's good to end on that sort of note that you can start experimenting without falling the ocean, I guess, with the whole organization.
Yeah, like our internal motto for Org Topologies is get the change going. Let's not have these, like ideals of fantastic orgs. No, this will block us from improving. Let's just start improving, start playing, and eventually see how new ways of working, new ways of organizing people actually do work and yield great results. And maybe you will see some new paradigms that are actually really new, not the pin factory of the 18th century.
Yeah.
Would love to see more of unpinned organizations.
Yes. I now remember all of that division of labor and stuff you mentioned on the training course too. And
All right, people are
yeah,
dropping off. I think we're time box.
I think that's it. I think we've got to let you go and enjoy the lake and cool down. So yeah, let's all thank Alexey one more time. I'll take a photo with this. I've actually got
Thanks
one
a
of
lot.
the old Canon AE1 cameras. You showed that, that the one
If
from
you want to be on the photo, you have 5 seconds to show your faces. Otherwise,
the
you'll
real
be
camera that works.
embarrassing black box for the day.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Let's keep in touch and see you at another meetup. Thanks so much, Alexey.